With Zenless Zone Zero only being in version 1.2, it's safe to say that there are still quite a few roles to be filled up. For example, as of now, we can't even build a team comprised solely of Ether characters because there are only 2 of them. And if the next Ether character is yet another attack one maybe, then we probably still can't have a proper mono Ether team. Luckily, despite having only 3 characters, Ice has a proper composition of stun, support, and attack, the perfect team. Electric, having the most characters before Caesar's release, has at least 1 character in each role, so probably the most decked out element as of now. And with Burnus entering the fray, Fire is also fully decked out. So then, one can't help but wonder, what's up with Physical? Before Caesar, Physical was the second to Electric in number with 5 characters, but for some reason, 3 are attack and 2 anomaly. And if we factor in the way Assault works, it's safe to say that Physical had nothing but DPS characters. When they released Jane, they must have been like, well, we already have 4 physical DPS, what else does the game need? Well, a physical DPS! Not even gonna question what the team was thinking when they're doing this, but I am gonna question which of them is the best choice for a physical DPS. And I thought to myself, why not all of them? Now obviously for players who are not as well as I, training 5 level 60 characters with level 60 W engines at this point in time is beyond insanity. Especially if we include the fact that they all play basically the same role. But alas, I am nothing if not insane. Before we try to figure out who players should go for if they have only one choice, allow me to set the parameters for my comparison. S-rank characters will be at M0 S1, while A-rank characters will be at M6 S5. They will use their signature W engines, and this will be standardized. Attack will share the same attack set, Anomaly will share the same anomaly set, so we pretty much have standardized stats. Core skills will be at level 3 and skills will be at level 11. Now I know M6 has an extra 4 skill levels, but we'll be testing them in pretty much the toughest environments currently in the game. So if they already have good performance, then you can decide if you want to go ahead and use those limited resources to max their skills out. Also, the reason it's M0 S1 versus M6 S5 is not because I'm expecting everyone to have M6 S5 A ranks right now, but more so to show the realized potential of the A ranks, since getting Mind Skates and enhancements for A ranks is much more realistic than it is for S ranks. For teams, we're gonna have Anbi and Nicole for attack characters and Anbi and Seth for anomaly characters. The stage used for testing will be in Shield Defense Disputed Node 8th Frontier. Also, though I don't think it has much of an impact, the Bang Boo that I'm bringing is a level 50 1-star Officer Toy. First contender, Corin Wix. I honestly had no idea how to play her because her attacks seem to require her to stand still while asking to get beat up. I then realized that this is actually the perfect place to test her out because we get increased damage on perfect evasions and perfect assist. So I played a team by switching between Anbi and Corin for perfect assist with the objective of filling the enemy's daze bars while doing a little damage on the side. Since Corin's W engine pretty much requires her to hold down her EX special, we'll need to stun the enemies before she can dish out high amounts of damage. Holding the attack button while she's doing her dodge counter or chain attack extends the attack. And I know you might be thinking, in a stage like this, she's gonna get one shot while trying to deal some extra damage. Well, not quite. While extending these attacks, she's actually in an extended iframe. So in fast-paced fights like these, she actually gets to slow the pace down, making it slightly easier to choose when to dodge or parry. Now typically I like to spend their energy, and the fast way to cheese it while staying relatively safe is to EX special, immediately switch to Nicole and use her EX special, which will grant a quick assist, allowing the DPS to re-enter with an iframe. The problem with Corin is that her EX special is not only too slow, it also has very short range, and the damage isn't worth the risk because it mainly only does damage when it's held down. And I know her whole thing is about holding down the attacks because she uses a saw, but needing to hold down the attacks makes her a really clunky character. In a stage like this, where the enemies are difficult to stagger, her attacks can often miss, or enemies can simply walk out of range while her saw is still spinning. Her ultimate also has surprisingly short range, but thankfully, its initial spin has a much larger AoE than any of her other attacks, so it's still able to catch multiple enemies. Hold attacks also work for her ultimate, but after doing 2 different runs, I realized holding attack with her ultimate doesn't really deal extra damage in the long run. Her EX special is where the damage is at. Also, the hold attack on her ultimate has incredibly short range, and the extension on the attack isn't very long anyway. Up next, Billy Kid, who is the direct opposite of Corin when it comes to range. I know, guns have more range than a chainsaw. I'm just as surprised as you guys. I found his dodge counter to be the most effective at dealing constant damage to enemies, and his ability to keep spending his energy due to his EX special being ranged is a good plus. Honestly, Billy did a lot more damage than I thought he would. Using him at lower levels, he didn't feel all that powerful, but when fully maxed out, he's surprisingly strong. The thing I had to watch out for was having enough dodges for emergencies. Using his dodge counter as my main attack also left me vulnerable if I had used 2 in a row and a parry wasn't available. I guess I shouldn't be surprised at the fact that he has very good synergy with the Cunning Hares, since it's sort of a full team. His speed and range allowed me to easily kite enemies, which also meant that their daze bars were constantly being filled and my decibel meter was also constantly going up. I thought his damage might be lower given how easily he can deal damage from afar, but I'd say it actually is slightly above my expectations. Next, another full team from the Cunning Hares, Nekomata enters the fray. If you're decent with evading, Nekomata definitely packs a punch while being able to respond to just about anything being thrown at her. Her dodge counter has good AoE, is fast, and has decent damage, and her chain attack is pretty much the same thing but stronger. I'd say my biggest issue was with her EX special because its range is simply abysmal, and although we do enter an iframe when doing an EX special, it actually doesn't start immediately. Many of us would probably have been caught out while trying to use EX specials to evade attacks, and with the range of her EX special, using it can get a little dicey. Her damage feels like it's a level above Billy's, which you'd expect when it's an S rank versus an A rank, even considering that it's M1 S0 versus M6 S5, but I did actually get a better time with Billy, so maybe for standard S ranks they might need a Mindscape or 2 to keep up. And now onto Anomaly with Piper Wheel. We do change things up a bit by also adding Seth to the team. I honestly don't think I'd choose to build Piper if I only had enough resources for one physical DPS and I didn't have Seth, but I'm gonna stick to this team comp and not run a Nicole run, okay? Seth changes up the entire rotation because his perfect assist actually leads straight into a quick assist, so it's a constant barrage of attacks from him and a DPS who in this case is Piper. This allows them to stay very safely under iframes while bringing the enemies very close to stun and building anomalies at the same time, which when triggered adds to their daze bars. While Piper does kind of feel similar to Corin in the sense that her EX special needs to be held down, she is a lot faster, has more AoE with the attack, and can actually move. And I know Corin can also move during her EX special, but the movement speed is actually a lot different. If timed well with the assault, it can also allow her to spin at enemies even when they are not stunned. Overall though, I wouldn't consider her to be stronger than Billy because she actually pretty much matched his timing, but she has Seth on her team who is harder to obtain than Nicole. So if run with Nicole, I do think she will be slightly harder to handle. And last, but certainly not least, Jane though. I'ma just say this, Jane is like all the strengths of the previous characters combined into one. She's fast, has wide area attacks, is able to spend her energy easily, builds Anomaly fast, like way faster than Piper obviously, and her ultimate has a huge AoE, as you'd expect from a limited S rank, especially in comparison with A ranks and a standard S rank. And though I can't say the same for Piper, I think it's fairly safe to say that a huge majority of players who got Jane Doe would probably have gotten Seth before her, because I got Seth to M5 before my first copy of Jane. So, you know, if you didn't get him first, well, you maybe just got her super early on your first pull or something. Anyway, needless to say, if you have Jane, you probably don't need this video to tell you that she is the one DPS that you should build when it comes to physical. Nevertheless, I added her in the video because it made sense. She is a physical DPS and some people might want to see how she does in comparison, so they can decide if they want to pull for her on a rerun, considering her rerun appears before another physical DPS. Alright, time to compare timing and give my final thoughts on each of them. Though I will have to say, Piper and Corin are actually put at a disadvantage because they were not in team comps that could activate their team skills. So I'd say you could shave 30 seconds off their clear time, but I will just put the original clear time. If Corin had say Lycan or Rina, she'd probably clear a lot faster due to her increased damage against stunned enemies. Similarly, Piper is also losing out, but in this case, it's an 18% damage increase for the entire team. In her case, I think Caesar would be a good teammate to add, but if you don't have Caesar, maybe Lucy. Clear times are on the screen, and starting with Corin, I'd say although her clear time was actually close to Piper's, playing her wasn't that enjoyable. she kind of really needed to stun both enemies at around the same time, or her HP would get chunked out while she's attacking, even with the 40% incoming damage reduction. Piper, I think, is usually used as a sub DPS slash support-ish kind of character, so her being able to be a main DPS is a bit of a bonus. Nekomata, I'd say, is probably the best pick since a single copy isn't hard to obtain and her W engine can actually be purchased with rebates. Billy Kid is fun, but it could ultimately get a little tiring to keep up with the dodge counters in a prolonged fight. And lastly, Jane Doe. Super smooth gameplay, fast assault procs, and also has faster stuns, but naturally, if you pull for her, you probably already have her built. Before we end the video though, there is another interesting aspect of the characters to explore, and I call this ability the herding ability. Basically, the enemies in shield defense will be scattered before the boss fights, and it's kinda hard to get them all together. You kinda have to herd them like a sheepdog. And if you can take them all out in one go, you save a lot of timing because you don't have to do the same combos to get rid of just a single target, and you just advance really quick. Of course, there's an advantage when you're using Nicole's gathering ability, but I found that some DPSs were unable to kill a mob of enemies in one go and they'd start to disperse. For some reason, despite lacking range, Corin actually excelled in this area, and naturally Jane didn't even need a gathering support to clear a mob. So there we have it. I hope this helps you if you're a newer player and haven't started building a physical team yet. Mostly, I was just curious to see the results for myself, but I thought it might be useful for others to see a rough comparison of the characters too. I know there are some people who just read up skills and theory craft, then place characters in their tier list, but I personally like to see characters in action, and also when possible, experience their gameplay firsthand before I decide how strong or weak they are. So if you have any other comparisons or characters you'd like to know more about, do let me know in the comments. Until then, this has been MG, thank you for watching, bye bye.